The Black Death, a tale of fear, suffering, and survival. The Black Death, or the Bubonic Plague, is one of the deadliest pandemics in human history. It ravaged Europe, Asia, and Africa between 1347 and 1351, leaving a deep scar on the world's population and transforming society in ways no one could have anticipated. The story of the Black Death is not just about the death toll, but about the human suffering, the mystery, and the incredible resilience of the people who lived through it. The arrival. It was the year 1347 when the first signs of the Black Death appeared in the ports of southern Europe. The disease is believed to have originated in the steppes of Central Asia, carried by fleas that lived on black rats. As merchants, soldiers, and pilgrims traveled along trade routes, particularly the Silk Road, they unknowingly spread the plague across the vast landmass. The disease reached the Crimean Peninsula in modern-day Ukraine by 1347, where it began to take hold. Genoese traders, fleeing the besieged city of Kaffa, now Feodosia, carried the infected rats and fleas aboard their ships. As the ships sailed across the Mediterranean, they unknowingly brought the disease to Italy, where it began to spread rapidly. By 1348, it had reached France, Spain, and England, and by 1350, it had crossed the English Channel and was making its way into Scandinavia. The spread across Europe. The first symptoms of the plague were horrific. Victims developed high fevers, chills, and aching limbs. Soon after, painful, swollen lymph nodes, known as buboes, would appear, often in the armpits, groin, or neck. These would become black and filled with pus, giving the disease its name, the Black Death. In some cases, the disease would progress so rapidly that death occurred within hours of the first symptoms. In the Italian city of Florence, one of the hardest-hit cities, the historian Giovanni Boccaccio recounted the scenes of devastation. The people lived in such a state of fear and horror that they did not even want to look after their sick relatives, he wrote in the Decameron. People fled their homes, abandoning friends and family to their deaths, not even pausing to mourn. Cities like Florence, Milan, and Venice saw death rates soar, with entire households wiped out in a matter of days. In Venice, a city that was once a bustling hub of trade, some reports suggest that more than 60,000 people died within a year. In England, the disease hit London particularly hard, where it is estimated that as many as half the population perished. The streets of the city became eerily quiet, with no one to bury the dead, and bodies were often piled up in mass graves. The collapse of society. The Black Death didn't just claim lives, it ravaged societies, causing profound social, economic, and religious upheaval. With such large numbers of the population dead, there were severe labor shortages. Fields were left untended, crops went unharvested, and many industries came to a halt. For those left behind, survival became a daily struggle. At the same time, the medieval social structure was upended. The feudal system, which had long been the backbone of European society, began to unravel as peasants found themselves in short supply. Some, empowered by the labor shortages, demanded higher wages or better working conditions, while others simply abandoned their villages, seeking to escape the plague. The Church, which had long held immense power and influence, also struggled to cope with the crisis. As the plague continued to spread, many people began to question the Church's ability to protect them from the disease. Priests, monks, and nuns, who had been tasked with offering solace and last rites to the dying, were themselves dying in large numbers. In some areas, it is said that entire monasteries were wiped out, leaving the faithful to fend for themselves. The lack of clear explanations for the Black Death led to widespread fear and superstition. Some believed that the disease was a punishment from God for the sins of humanity, and as a result, many sought refuge in religious acts such as processions, prayer, and flagellation. Others turned to more bizarre solutions, such as potions and spells. One of the most infamous and tragic outcomes of this fear was the persecution of minority groups, particularly Jews. In several European cities, Jewish communities were blamed for causing the plague, and violent pogroms broke out. Thousands of Jews were killed or expelled from their homes, their synagogues destroyed, and their property looted. These acts of violence were fueled by misinformation and mass hysteria, with no real understanding of the disease's cause. The end of the plague and aftermath. By 1351, the Black Death had largely run its course in Europe, but the damage had been done. An estimated 25 million people, roughly one-third of Europe's population, had died. The true number of deaths is difficult to determine, but it is widely acknowledged that this was one of the deadliest events in human history. The aftermath of the plague was profound. Economies struggled to recover, and entire regions saw dramatic depopulation. However, some historians argue that the Black Death helped to pave the way for significant changes in Europe. The labor shortage caused by the death toll gave rise to a new working class and contributed to the decline of the feudal system. As the supply of labor became more scarce, peasants demanded and received higher wages, and many moved to urban centers in search of better opportunities. In the long term, the plague contributed to the end of medieval society and set the stage for the Renaissance, a period of cultural rebirth and intellectual exploration that began in the 14th century and reached its peak in the 15th and 16th centuries. Lessons from the Black Death. The Black Death left a profound legacy on the world. While its immediate impact was devastating, it also led to changes in medicine, public health, and social structures that would shape the future. The disease revealed the vulnerabilities of humanity to invisible forces, and it showed the fragility of even the most advanced societies of the time. Despite the terror it caused, the Black Death also sparked changes in thought. It led to greater scientific inquiry into the causes of diseases, as many began to question the supernatural explanations that had previously dominated. Although centuries have passed since the Black Death, it serves as a reminder of how quickly life can be upended by forces beyond our control. It teaches us about the importance of compassion in the face of suffering, the need for resilience in times of crisis, and the strength of the human spirit to endure even the darkest of times.